former FBI Director James Comey released a video in response to being indicted by the Justice Department on charges he lied to Congress, which he denies, and you know who claims there are more indictments on the way. Take a look.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either.
Now that James Comey has been indicted, who is the next person on your list in this retribution? Not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt.
Is this more about justice or is it about revenge?
It's about justice, not revenge.
Didn't he say early on it was where he was going to take revenge? People kept saying, don't do revenge. He said revenge is best served cold or something. He was talking to Hannity, I think, or somebody in the office. I mean, you've said it's revenge, so why should people think it's not if you said it was?
Well, I will say this, you know, having looked at the indictment, the 2-page indictment in federal court, I was wondering what this would look like, because generally when you, as a prosecutor, go into the grand jury and you get an indictment, and especially an indictment based on a false statement or a criminal, what we call kind of a criminal lie, it's very exacting, it's very robust, and it's very detailed. This is the opposite of that. And
Is it written in crayon?
It's basically 1.5 pages. It's a bare bones indictment. And what is very telling is that no career assistant United States attorney presented this case to the grand jury.
The
person who presented this case
right?
was the insurance lawyer, who is now the U.S. attorney of the Eastern District and has never prosecuted a case in her life. And so she's the one that presented it to the grand jury, and she is the one who signed the indictment. And that says a lot, that no prosecutor in the Eastern District, which is a very well-regarded office, signed it. The other thing that comes to mind is what you're pointing to. Is this a vengeful act? Is this a prosecution that is vindictive or selective? Cases that are brought can be dismissed outright by a federal court if they find that it was brought
Is this frivolous?
vindictive. It's not frivolous, but I don't know if it's frivolous or not, because there's no details in it. But a case can be dismissed if it is vindictive or selective prosecution. And the president himself has put out on, what's his thing? Truth Social. He has put out there, you know, you need to get this person, you need to indict to the Attorney General. So I think it's going to be very simple to go into a court and say to the judge, this is a vindictive prosecution, please dismiss it, and then it gets dismissed. So in effect, this is sort of, this could end in humiliation for the Department of Justice.
And look, Donald Trump promised a bunch of things, right? He promised he would end wars on day one. He promised to lower.
He ended 7 of them.
Well, he promised he was.
7.
He didn't. Well, Ukraine and Gaza are still raging,
Yeah.
but he promised he would lower the cost of groceries. A lot of things he hasn't delivered on, but he promised retribution.
He did.
And that he is most certainly delivering on. And look, this is about James Comey, yes, in the sense that Trump hates him very personally and specifically, even though I think he should send the guy a fruit basket, because many people think he helped Trump win in 2016 with the announcement he made about Hillary Clinton. But in addition to this being about Comey, this is also much broader. It is about Comey. It is also about us, about all of us collectively as Americans. It is about silencing us through fear. It is about stifling the opposition, dissent, criticism, whether it's the media or universities or people with a big platform or people that spoke against him that worked in his administration. But that in dictatorships, and I know it's a little weird for me to say that as I'm sitting here dressed like Fidel Castro, but that is how dictatorships work. They start by silencing the people with the big platforms, but then they get to regular Americans. And that's why we have to remember that in this country, our weapon is our voice and our vote. And if we want guardrails anytime during this Trump administration, which gets worse by the day, we need to elect a Democratic House and Senate next year and hope that they provide those guardrails, because we are going down a very slippery slope and it is getting worse by the minute.
Do you think everyday Americans... We've talked a lot about what the Democrats need to do and that sort of thing. Do you think something like this changes the landscape at all? Do you think someone who voted for him, maybe a 3-time Trump voter, do you think this kind of thing they take note of?
It's a good question, and unfortunately, I think the answer is no, probably, if you voted for him multiple times. But I try to keep myself honest when something like this happens. And so I'm looking at it from the vantage point of, let's say Barack Obama was in office, and he tweeted out, I want Eric Holder, my attorney general, to investigate George Bush's FBI director, which oddly enough was Robert Mueller. But I want you to investigate the former Republican administration's FBI director. I would say that is such an improper use of the power of the presidency. It breaks the longstanding tradition of the DOJ being separate, even though it's part of the executive branch, a separate body within the executive branch. And I would say it's
with autonomy.
It's wholly inappropriate. And by the way, I think you're totally right that it's going to prejudice the outcome of this case. I think it's very unlikely he's actually convicted. So I think we have to look at things from the vantage point of what precedent are we setting? Have we ever seen something like this in our lives, and what does it mean? Because I can't definitively say that Comey didn't perjure himself. I just don't have the facts to know if he did. He's going to have his day in court. But the reason this is happening, I believe, is Trump feels like he had to defend himself in court, and he wants all the people who ticked him off, who stood up against him, to have to go through the same thing. Convictions may not be the goal, but tons of legal bills, silencing people and scaring people is. And at the end of the day, what's it have to do with the cost of living, which you got elected on? Unemployment is now higher than the number of jobs that there are available. Americans are hurting, and that's what they want him focused on. They don't want him focused. Nobody cares about James Comey. I'm sure people do, but that's not what the American people want him to be focused on.
That's what I was wondering. And I got to tell you, I don't even think this goes to trial. I don't think it goes to trial. I think it gets dismissed by a federal judge. So it's again, sort of this humiliation of the Department of Justice that used to be sort of the gold standard of prosecutors' offices. It's really
now,
sad.
You know, America, we're all seeing the holes that exist that we have never had to deal with before. We've never had to deal with anything like this before. That's why Europe is looking at us kind of going, we've been through this, so you can't go around it, you can't go under it, you got to go through it. So,
but we have those holes because we are a check and balance. We have checks and balances, and those checks and balances are not working because the Republicans are rubber stamping everything he comes up with in the Congress, and the people he appointed to the cabinet are a bunch of men and women who are letting him do all sorts of crazy things that the first cabinet in the first term did not let him do.
Well, people are they were adhering to the law. You know, and once you see what happens when you let the law go, you get lawlessness. So this is why, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, you got to pay attention to this. Because when it comes down to it, we're all just Americans. We're all just Americans. And when it eats your pocketbook, it eats their pocketbook, it eats her pocketbook, it is not good for the nation. And at the rate we're going, you know, we could be in some trouble at some point. And they're not going to share it with you. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but, you know, it's not going to be